In this video, we'll discuss the classification of the multi-drug resistance. In 2012, there is all the classification of the multi-drug resistant that are classified into three categories: the multi-drug resistant, extensively drug resistant, and pan-drug resistant. And to understand the difference between the three categories, we can see these examples. For the patient, we have a patient have a Klebsiella pneumoniae that are resistant to the ceftriaxone, ciprofloxacin, and amikacin. So these type of bacteria are non-susceptible to the three or more antimicrobial categories. These called multi-drug resistant. But in this, the second example, we have an E. coli that are resistant to the all antibiotics, but only sensitive to two classes of the antibiotics. So the isolates that are non-susceptible to at least one agent in all but two or fewer antimicrobial is called extensively drug resistant. The third example that the bacteria is resistant to the all types of the antibiotics is called ban drug resistant. The older classification, the problem in the older classification is that this classification has no clinical implication in the management. So the newer classification are mentioned by are used by the last guideline published in 2022, which is the guideline for the treatment of the infection caused by multi-drug resistant gram-negative bacilli. And to understand this classification, we need to understand the classification of the gram-negative bacteria into three classes: the Enterobacteriaceae, Pseudomonas, and Acinetobacter. The Enterobacteriaceae are the large group of bacteria that may include Klebsiella, E. coli, Enterobacter, Citrobacter, Proteus, Serratia, and other types of the gram-negative bacteria. And each types of the bacteria category of bacteria of gram-negative, either Enterobacteriaceae, Pseudomonas, or Acinetobacter, are further classified into specific types of resistance. For example, the Enterobacteriaceae or Enterobacteres are classified according to whether the bacteria are resistant to the ceftriaxone or third generation cephalosporin. This is called third generation cephalosporin resistance Enterobacteriaceae, or it is resistant to the carbapenem. This is called carbapenem resistance Enterobacteriaceae. So the Enterobacterales or Enterobacteriaceae like Klebsiella or E. coli classified according to whether it is sensitive or resistant to the third generation cephalosporin, so it's resistant to the third generation cephalosporin, or resistant to the carbapenem, so it is carbapenem resistant. The Pseudomonas aeruginosa is classified into two types. Either it is carbapenem resistant, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, or difficult to treat Pseudomonas aeruginosa. And we will discuss what is the difference between the carbapenem resistance and difficult to treat. Acinetobacter is classified according to whether it is carbapenem resistant or not into carbapenem resistant Acinetobacter baumannii or FAB. To understand more the difference in the classification, we can see these tables that mention in the row axis the types of bacteria: Enterobacteriaceae, Pseudomonas, and Acinetobacter, and in this column, the types of the antibiotics, and finally, the classification of the multi-drug resistance. For Enterobacteriaceae, Klebsiella as an example of the Enterobacteriaceae, if it is resistant to the ceftriaxone, but sensitive to the carbapenem, so it's called third generation cephalosporin resistance Enterobacteriaceae. But if it is resistant to the carbapenem, so it's called carbapenem resistance Enterobacteriaceae. This is for Enterobacteriaceae MDR classification. So it is either third generation cephalosporin resistance Enterobacteriaceae or carbapenem resistance Enterobacteriaceae. But for Pseudomonas, it classified into either carbapenem resistant Pseudomonas or difficult to treat Pseudomonas. And the main difference between these two categories that the carbapenem resistant and difficult to treat, all of them are resistant to the carbapenem, while for difficult to treat will be resistant to not only to the carbapenem, but will be resistant to the carbapenem, quinolones, and piperacillin tazobactam. But if the Pseudomonas is sensitive to either ciprofloxacin or quinolone or piperacillin tazobactam only, this called carbapenem-resistant Pseudomonas, not difficult to treat. So the difficult to treat would be resistant to all types of the beta-lactam antibiotic, either carbapenem, non-carbapenem, and quinolones. The Acinetobacter, if it is resistant to the carbapenem, so it's called carbapenem-resistant Acinetobacter pneumoniae or CRAP. So the definition of the difficult to treat is the resistance to all first-line agents, which include piperacillin tazobactam, ceftazidime, cefepime, astrinam, and the carbapenem and the quinolones also. This is called difficult to treat. And why this classification is important? Because there is difference in the mortality between the difficult to treat gram-negative bacteria and carbapenem resistant. So if the bacteria is only carbapenem resistant, but it is sensitive to the other first line of agent like piperacillin tazobactam or quinolone, so the mortality is not that high in comparison to the bacteria that are resistant to all first line of the antibiotics. And in the next video, we'll discuss the management of each types of gram-negative bacteria according to the mechanism of resistance. Thank you.